Good evening and a really warm welcome to everybody. This is the first Monday in the year 2021, so Happy New Year. And as I was thinking about Happy New Year, I was reminded that earlier this week I was planning something for just a few days later. I think it was like Tuesday or Wednesday, and I was planning something that was going to be done on Sunday, just a few days later. And this recognition, like, oh, it'll be a different year. It'll be 2021 on Sunday. But it's really just 4 days later. So, of course, kind of pointing to this idea that a new year is a concept. Right, that on one particular day is the ending of one year, is the next beginning of the next year. But maybe in some ways we feel like, well, shouldn't New Year's always start on a Monday? It seems like new things should start on Mondays. Or maybe they should start with a full moon. But instead it just happened to be on a Thursday night. So this just highlights that, a calendar, for example, is just some system that got created to organize days. And we do this by giving names to particular periods of time, days or week, month, year. And in the same way we might understand that a concept, the idea of a concept is, in the simplest terms, is a name that we give to abstractions, and we work with it or consider it as if it had a concrete or material existence, as if it were actually an object that we could touch or taste or hear or something like this. We all know this. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. But this, the recognition of concepts and working with concepts and understanding how they are related to and how they are different from actual felt experiences is an integral part of meditation practice. Of course we need concepts, and of course we use them all day long. We need them to support categorization or learning or memory, understanding, decision-making, all kinds of things, problem-solving. So of course we need concepts, but I want to say that it doesn't lead to. There's more than one way to have some understanding of our experience, and becoming sensitive to concepts. And when it's useful to really stay with the idea of a concept, or to stay with the felt experience of something, is an important part of meditation practice. For example, in the guided meditation that I did earlier, we talked about the experience of stretching, or the idea of movement, so stretching the chest or the abdomen with the breath. And this is in contrast to just using the word breath, mindfulness of breathing. Because really breathing is, in some ways, is a concept. It's this collection of incredible, amazing collection of the way the body exchanges carbon dioxide and oxygen, and the way the abdomen, the diaphragm moves, which causes, the chest and the abdomen to be moving. And maybe as a little aside, I'll just say that when I first learned the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide and hemoglobin in our red blood cells, for me that was one of the most beautiful, elegant amazing thing that I had learned. There was just that nature could come up with this fantastic, I'm using this word elegant, but just really amazing way in which to exchange carbon dioxide and oxygen. That ended up changing my life, learning that. I became so touched and amazed and in awe, maybe is the right word with that, that I chose to eventually get a PhD in biochemistry. I didn't study hemoglobin, but just to get a glimpse of what's actually happening, to get a glimpse of kind of the mechanics, down into some of the nitty-gritty, as opposed to just the idea of breathing, or we have blood pumping through the lungs, or air going in and out of the lungs, or, whatever it might be. So for me, there's been just this real appreciation for when we kind of like land onto with a greater intimacy, maybe, with what the actual experience is. And in some way, meditation is the same way, or at least mindfulness meditation is. I was getting back to when we think about breathing, sometimes we just say mindfulness of breathing, but what is breathing really? As I was saying, it's this collection of movements and biochemical processes and even chemical processes, and we can choose which layers or which elements to pay attention to. And that's part of meditation practice as well, is even becoming aware of that there are different layers and that there are different aspects of our experience. We can stay at one level where we just say the word breathing, mindfulness of breathing, or we could stay at a different aspect or a different level is tuning into the bodily sensations, like the stretching that happens with an inhale and then the subsequent contraction and the transition between the contraction and the expansion. In the same way, we might, if there's an uncomfortable experience that we're having, such as a pain, I'll use this word pain in the knee, or sometimes that happens with meditation, or in the back, or whatever it might be. And when we use this word pain as the name, as the label, as the concept that we're using for these uncomfortable sensations, the word pain brings with it all kinds, a whole host of additional baggage, maybe I'll say, that, when there's pain, we might have this idea that it absolutely has to stop right now. Having any degree of pain is a failing of some sort, either a failing of ourselves, we didn't take care of ourselves well enough, or failing of somebody else, so we have to blame somebody else, or maybe it's something, pain might set off a whole host of stories about, oh no, now I won't be able to do X, Y, Z, and then if I can't do X, Y, Z, then I will have to do something else that's extreme, and then off we go with a lot of story making. So sometimes with our meditation practice, we might be experiencing uncomfortable sensations, but then we say, oh, there's that pain. And down we go with this cascade of events of story making and often some contraction and maybe some fear. As opposed to, what if we just bring in the idea, there is an uncomfortable stabbing sensation in the lower part of my left knee. It's very uncomfortable. There's some aversion to this uncomfortableness. The stabbing doesn't seem like the strength is the same all the time. It feels like it's moving. So in this way of just tuning into the felt experience and not using that concept of pain or that label of pain, but instead to use the words throbbing or stabbing or diffuse, sharp, stable or really moving or intermittent or steady or getting stronger, getting less, whatever it might be. Then we can just be with the felt experience, and we're less likely to then go down this cascade of a whole bunch of stories. So we might consider that there's a number of different aspects to each experience. This is something that we can consider and use as a tool to help us with our experiences and to be with them in a more complete way. So one is that there's concepts, there's ideas, names, labels, and the example I gave was just this word pain. With an experience, there's also the felt sense, and the example I gave, that was like the stabbing or a throbbing or something like this. And there might also be a third element too, an image. And the image might be of either the concept that we're using, maybe pain, and it's not clear, and it may not even be really at the forefront of our minds, or maybe it's even just like right below the clarity, right below kind of what's conscious, not that it's unconscious, but just a little bit below. There might be an image, and this image of the concept might be something like a big black box, or it might be like this big red kind of like danger sign, or maybe when we said the word stabbing, had this flickering image of something really sharp implement stabbing, a knife stabbing, or something like this. So for this, all experiences that we're having, there's these different aspects that are happening all at once, and we can tune into different ones: concept, felt sense, and image. And we can use this notion, this concept of having these three different aspects as a way to support our practice. And to highlight this idea that there are different aspects to this, here's a quote from the suttas, from the Theravada 104 with Kittaka is the name of the monk. Some of you may know that the Theravada is a collection of verses of awakened persons, and the Theravada is for men, and Therigata is for women. And so this in the Theravada, Kittaka says, "Hey, my body is light. Having been touched with vast joy and happiness, my body feels like it's floating, like cotton blowing in the wind." Something kind of lyrical, and I found myself smiling when I was saying that. So kind of like tuning into what the felt experience is. He's talking about it being light, as in the sense of buoyant, or not heavy. My body is light, having been touched with vast joy and happiness. My body feels like it's floating, like cotton blowing in the wind. So he even brings a little bit of image. The cotton blowing in the wind, and feels like it's floating. And maybe even when he says, my body is light, maybe that's a concept, maybe that's his felt experience. Maybe I would say it's the concept. So in this little stanza, we can see these three different elements of concept, felt sense, and image. And so these are different ways that we might consider our experience, and these, it's not neat and tidy, and I don't want to make any claims about the reality of existence or anything like this. I want to offer this as a way to support our practice. This idea of having these three different elements, and to notice when is it helpful to pay attention to the different elements, and when is it helpful to really distinguish these different elements. And that, of course, is a big part of what mindfulness practice and concentration practice and loving kindness practice. So I would say meditation practice is a part of that is like to tease apart these different elements. And part of the reason why we do this, of course, maybe to kind of like zoom back out into the big picture, is so that meditation practice can help bring some freedom and some ease and peace into our life. And part of the way that we can do that is to understand what's really happening. Often without realizing it, we move through life with a whole bag of ideas, notions, conceptions, projections, and beliefs about ourselves, about life, about others. We have these ideas about how things should be, or about how they are, or about how they were. And so we are kind of like moving through this life just on the ideas, with our ideas, not so much really connected to or feeling our experiences. We're more staying in the head, so to speak, with just our ideas. And mindfulness is a way in which we can bring this quality of attention to this experience and notice that there are these three different aspects. And we can notice what the felt experience of our life is actually like, to have this certain intimacy with the moment, the texture, the feeling, maybe with the lack of a better word. So to help us, this way we can understand our lives a little bit better. So we might notice that we can uncover what is actually happening rather than our ideas about what's happening. And we might discover that what's actually happening is we have this certain patterns of behavior, or certain patterns of speech, or patterns of thought processes that are story making that gets triggered with particular events. And we might be so accustomed to having these patterns that we don't notice them anymore. But if we can tune into the sensations in the body, it might be a way in which we can get underneath some of these thought patterns, or can help cue us in that these thought patterns are happening. So it's a way in which we can investigate what are these three aspects that are happening, and to include these three aspects of experience: concepts, felt sense, and image. And if we find ourselves kind of stuck or not fully understanding, then we can look at maybe another aspect of experience that we often don't look at. And most often that would be our direct experience, or maybe image. Most often we're with the concepts, the ideas, the notions, and not so much with our direct experience. And this way we can understand ourselves, understand our patterns, and understand how things work, as opposed to our ideas about what's happening. For example, if we have an idea that our neighbor is so inconsiderate and is a terrible person because they let their dog bark, and the dog barking is annoying us, and we have this big idea about our neighbor being a terrible person, then we might not be noticing when they are doing something kind, like they're not parking their car and where we usually park our car, or maybe they are taking care of something that maybe we don't even know, but they're taking care of their house in such a way that they're not encouraging pests or something like this. Or yeah, I'm not very good at often coming up with examples extemporaneously. This is not my strength. Maybe I'll say, maybe that's a good example. It was just a concept there, that this idea I have about myself. It's a little bit of funny, right? When I'm trying to talk about concepts and then I slip right into it. But sometimes we can think about how bare attention is a part of mindfulness. That sometimes is how we talk about mindfulness. And that is, instead of layering this moment with this thick covering of ideas, that we are actually drawing close in an intimate way, in a direct way, the bare actuality of our experience. What does it really feel like? What does the breath really feel like? What is the sound? What is that experience of the sound? Or instead of there's a sound and then the mind automatically wants to figure it out. What is it? Where is it going? Or can we just be with the experience of having a sound arise without getting lost in stories? So when I'm talking about these three different aspects, and when I mention this idea of bare attention, I don't want to give the impression that mindfulness means that we have to get rid of all our thoughts or all of our thinking. And it's very common that we might have this idea that meditation is about getting rid of thoughts, and we just have to be with the felt experience. And that we might fall into this idea, well, if I have thinking, if thinking has arisen, is occurring, then somehow it must be squashed or destroyed or excised or something like that. But the objective of mindfulness is something different than that. I was saying one way is to just tune in and to be really aware of maybe the different aspects of our experience and to pay particular attention to the felt sense. And one reason for that is because the felt sense is more happening here and now, whereas the mental experiences, it's easier to get lost in those and get lost into stories. But if there's thinking, if there's these types of mental experiences, mindfulness is just the practice of being aware, oh, there's thinking. Or, oh, the thinking is quieted. Oh, there's a lot of thinking. So mindfulness doesn't mean that we have to get rid of all our thoughts, doesn't mean we have to get rid of concepts. We can't get rid of concepts. It's the way that we navigate the world. But just to notice that, just to notice the thinking, or to notice the different aspects of our experience. And even into the even when the mind starts to settle down, we might be noticing that the thinking is settling down. And it might get, I like to use this expression, that whereas before we were writing whole stories, maybe book chapters, and then maybe the thinking turns into paragraphs. Then as the mind settles, as the mind starts to get a little bit more collected, then it can be more about that maybe thinking is just a sentence or two. And maybe the sentence is, oh, there's not much thinking going on. And all the time, and even in the beginning of concentration practice, even absorption practices, when the mind is really settled and absorbed into its object, like really connected to its object. There's a way in which the instructions are to, here's one way that often the first absorption, the first jhana, the first stage of concentration practice, the suttas say that the meditator fills, pervades, saturates, and permeates this body with the joy and happiness born of seclusion, so that no part of one's entire body is not touched with it. So in this way, there's this idea of to fill, pervade, saturate, and permeate. So maybe that's a little bit of both. It's a concept, but it's also maybe a felt experience. What does it feel like to be filled up with joy and happiness? What is it like to pervade the body with joy and happiness? So in this way we can see how there's this movement both of the ideas and concepts as well as a felt experience, as well as maybe an image. Maybe there's the image, very slight, or maybe it's very clear, of a body that is filled up with, like a cup gets filled up with water, or maybe how the heart pumps blood out and fills up the capillaries, or I don't know. All of us have our own images that are unique to us, that correspond to our experiences. But just recognizing that each experience has these different aspects, and we can tune into these different aspects at different times as part of our practice. So, with this, it allows us to be present and to understand ourselves, so that with this greater understanding, that we might understand others and appreciate others. And in this way, we can be part of bringing more joy and happiness to this world and to ourselves. So, thank you very much.